Hey everyone, welcome back to another mining chamber video. In today's video, we are going to be building a 6 RTX 3080 mining rig. So now the first thing I want to do is talk about the costs of this rig, and then after that we are going to build it and talk about specific notes that you need to know when you're building a similar mining rig. This won't be a step-by-step mining rig build guide, but I will have one coming very soon. Now if you do want more details after watching this video and you're still stuck building your rig, you can watch Red Panda Mining live stream where he built his RTX 3080, and then you can also watch Crypto Miner Tips, who has a full guide on building your mining rig, and it has a lot of information in there. So after building the rig and going over the build notes, I want to talk about how much money this mining rig will be making, as well as how much electricity it will be consuming. So now let's go ahead and first get started with the parts for this mining rig. So first we have the GPUs, which is the main part. Now for the GPUs, I'm running Asus TUF RTX 3080s, 6 of them. Now gamers are definitely going to kill me and the comments will look like a bloodbath, but hopefully that does not happen. Now I was able to buy my Asus TUF RTX 3080s from nerdgears.com. Now that was a while back and now I'm finally doing the build. These GPUs were not as expensive as they were now. Right now you guys find them for $2,200 and more. But when I bought them from Nerdgears, they were around $1,300, but then after customs and tax, I would say let's round it up to $1,400 each, which is still a really good deal, and I'm lucky that I was able to get that deal. Now I highly suggest bookmarking nerdgears.com in case they do any new drops for a hardware, but just remember the prices won't be the same. It's probably going to be inflated just as it is now. So getting 6 GPUs for $1,400, that would put us at $8,400 for all 6 cards. Now as for the power supplies, I got 2 EVGA P2 1200 watts and I got those for $110 each. I had them a while back and I just finally used them. Now these two 1200 watts power supplies are good enough to power up the RTX 3080s, 6 of them. Now you can also go with a 1000 watt power supply, 2 of those, and you'll be fine. But it is good to have 1200 watts to have more room for error. Now as for extra cables, I've got some splitters and I got 6 8-pin to dual 8-pin from Nerdgears, as well as 6 risers from Nerdgears as well. And then since we also have 2 power supplies, you also need a PSU adapter to be able to power up both of these power supplies together. And in this video we're not going to be using it since I did not order it in time, but I highly suggest getting that if you're using 2 power supplies. I will show you guys how I end up doing it later on, but for now please get that so you can avoid any damages if you are planning on running 2 power supplies. Now as for the motherboard, I have a BioStar TB250 BTC Pro. I also had this a while back and I got it for $55, and then I also have an Intel Celeron G3930 and that I got for $45 as well. And then for RAM, I have an 8GB DDR4 stick for $15, and as for storage, I'm using a 120GB Kingston SSD for also $15. And then finally for the frame, I'm using a 6 GPU Veta frame, and usually the cost of those are around $40. That is if you are able to find them. Now you can't really find these frames at all, so I would suggest looking for different ones or building your own frame. Now I know a lot of these parts pricing is very imaginary and they're very low, but all these parts I've had in a different mining rig and I took apart that mining rig to be able to use them for this one. Since I ended up combining 2 rigs together, so I had a 6 GPU rig and another 6 GPU rig, and now they're 12 GPU rig under one motherboard and CPU. A video on that will be coming out very soon. So if you guys want more accurate prices, it's hard for me to give you them because it's really hard to find any of these parts. So I will suggest going off of the list that I have that I will leave in the descriptions below. Now in that list, you'll be able to find all the parts there, and then you can just click on the link and find the part, and hopefully you can find it for a decent price. Now you'll also notice I have an MSRP column in that list, and that is in an ideal world where you can actually buy these things for MSRP, which is nearly impossible. So for now, I'll just leave it there so you guys have an idea. And then we're also going to talk about performance and return on investment later on after the build. Now before we start off the time lapse for this mining rig build, I first want to say guys, I've released some clothing that you guys can feel free to buy to support the channel. So you guys will be able to find this on store.miningchamber.com, and then if you come here you'll find a couple of designs for season 1. So these clothes will be released in seasons, and each season will have a bunch of styles that you guys can feel free to pick from if you like any of them. And there is a limited quantity, so feel free to grab whichever one you like before it sells out. If you guys have any questions on the merchandise, feel free to join Mining Chamber Discord and then chat with me there and let me know if you have any questions. I just want to say thank you guys so much for giving me the opportunity to do this, and I hope you guys like the designs. Now let's go ahead and kick in the build time lapse, and then after the build time lapse we're going to talk about notes regarding the build, so anything that you might have questions on, it's most likely going to be answered after the mining rig build time lapse. Now let's get started. And that is it for the time lapse. I hope you guys enjoyed the time lapse. If you guys think it's too much or if I should remove the time lapse from the video and just jump to it being built straight, you guys can let me know. I'm always here to listen to your feedback. Now I'm sure you have a lot of questions on your mind about this build. So first let me talk about the most obvious things, and if I do miss anything, feel free to let me know in the comments below. So the first thing that's on your mind, I'm sure, is how did you power on your second power supply without any power supply splitters? So usually the right way to do it is by getting a power supply splitter, connecting both power supplies, and then when you turn on your mining rig, they both turn on at the same time. Now that's the right way and the proper way to do it. Since I didn't have a power supply splitter at the time of building this rig, I ended up using a non-formal method. So the way that I did it was basically through using the power supply tester that usually comes with your power supply. So all that does, it shorts your black and green cables together, and that would turn on your power supply. Now that's a well-known test for your power supply to make sure that it's properly working. So by using that little adapter, the moment I give power to the power supply, it will automatically turn on. So the moment I hit that switch on the power supply itself, the power supply will start running. Now if you don't have this power supply tester tool, you can easily just do it with a paper clip. Plug in 2 paper clips in the green and the black wire, and then you should be good to go. Again, please make sure to avoid this method. You can damage your power supply if you put it in the wrong pins, and I highly suggest doing a lot more research before doing this method because I'm not covering it in full. I'm just letting you know what I used here. So now since I have my secondary power supply plugged into that adapter, the primary power supply is plugged into the motherboard. That's the one that's also powering the CPU. So the way you want to turn on your power supplies is you want to turn on your secondary one first so that it powers the 3 GPUs that are connected to it, and then you turn on your primary power supply. If you do it the opposite way, your mining rig will probably not detect those other 3 GPUs being powered by the secondary power supply, so make sure that you run your secondary power supply before you run the primary one. So hopefully that answered your question on that method. Now as for my GPU layout, I have 3 GPUs plugged into each power supply. We will talk about the power draw off the wall later on, but now let me clarify how I powered my GPUs. So as you guys seen in the time lapse, I've used splitters to power the GPUs, so 2 8-pin male to 1 8-pin female to power the GPU, and then a VGA cable directly from the power supply to the splitter, and then the other 8-pin or 6-pin of that cable goes into the riser. So I have one cable plugging into a splitter, and then the other side of that cable is plugging into a riser. Now I was fortunate enough to have an 8-pin and a 6-pin cables, but if you have a single 8-pin cable, then you will need to use a different cable for your riser. And one last build note is your motherboard Molex. So if you guys noticed, I also only powered one Molex port on the motherboard. I did not power the second one because the cable did not reach it. Now I can simply just plug in another Molex cable in my power supply and then power that secondary Molex port. The only reason I didn't do so is because my rig is stable without it, so I don't need to worry about it. But if I do come across any instability, I'm going to make sure that I power that cable. Some people say you don't have to power them, but according to the manual of the motherboard, it's preferred that you do. It will help you with stability. Now that I hope I covered the build notes that you guys have questions on, if I missed anything, please let me know in the comments below. So now let's go ahead and talk about the operating system I'm going to use, and then what coin I'm going to be mining, how much is the hash rate, and how much is the power draw. So now for operating system, I decided to use Hive OS for this mining rig. Now I really do like Hive OS. It's a pretty easy OS to use and it's straightforward. Now the main reason that I'm using it is because I'm having a good number of rigs now, and it's hard to manage them all on Windows. I will be making a video soon talking about operating systems for mining rigs and which one you should be using, but until then, let's go ahead and get back to the point. So I'm not going to go through the setup for Hive OS since I've already made a full guide for that, and the link will be in the descriptions below. You guys can feel free to use that guide to get started on Hive OS. So here you guys can see I have all my RTX 3080s up and running, and I have all my overclocks set from the RTX 3080 overview that I've released before this video, where we talked about the overclocks and the thermal throttling issue. So the thermal throttling issue, you guys can see here my GPUs, some of them are doing poorly while others are doing pretty well. So I have 2 Asus TUFs that are actually giving the proper hash rate for my overclocks, and then I have a couple others that are getting lower. Some of them are getting a lot lower. Now this used to be a lot worse until I turned on a fan next to this rig. So the only reason that you're seeing this thermal throttling is because your VRAMs are getting really hot. Now I did have a better hash rate over the time when it was colder where I live, but then when it started getting hotter, the hash rate started dropping as well. So one of the solutions, like I mentioned in the RTX 3080 video, is turning on some fans, and after doing that I did see a good boost for the hash rates. It got a lot better. Some of them were at 80 and now it's at 90, but that's still not enough. So I might be changing the thermal pads if after after getting another fan and blowing it near them won't fix the situation. So if you're having the same issue, don't worry, you're not alone. It's basically almost all RTX 3080s and 3090s. Just make sure that you provide for them enough cooling. If not, then you can try to replace your thermal pads or add new thermal pads to your GPU. So now for the power draw, my primary power supply is drawing around 766 watts to 770. That is powering 3 GPUs and the system itself. So we can estimate that the system is around 40 watts, which leaves us with around 730 watts for the 3 GPUs. Which means that these GPUs are potentially consuming around 240 watts each. Now I can definitely reduce the power draw and make it more efficient, and I will be working on that, and then I will update the overclocks on miningchamber.com. And then my secondary PSU is drawing around 750 watts, so that gives you around the same numbers. It's a little bit over 240 watts for each GPU. As long as you're still drawing below 80% of your power supply, you'll be completely set. That's why using a 1000 watt power supply also on these rigs will be completely fine. So now that we know our power draw is around 1530 watts total, and then our hash rate is around 567, although I'm just going to round up the hash rate to 600 because that is possible with these cards. You can get them to 100 megahash if you do replace your thermal pads or place a good amount of fans around them. So just for the sake of this video, I'm going to say 600 megahash, and I will be eventually changing my thermal pads and changing the overclocks a little bit so that we can achieve 600 megahash. So we have 1530 watts and 600 megahash. Let's go ahead and jump to the profitability sheet and talk about how long this rig will take to break even and how much money will it make based on the date of this video being recorded. So for the profitability, here we have the estimated rewards from whattomine.com calculator. Now we have set 600 megahash, and for power we're doing 1500 watts. So after shaving off some watts, you guys will be able to get it even lower than this. But like I mentioned, these overclocks will be fine-tuned later on. And for electricity costs, we're doing 10 cents per kilowatt hour. So the block reward here is average at 2.96, and this plays a big factor in your profitability. Usually when there's more transactions, the block reward is higher, which means there is more money on the table. So we do now know that after EIP 1559 is implemented, the block reward will be a constant 2 Ethereum per block, which will reduce the profitability by a lot. In this scenario, it will reduce it by 30%, but we can go ahead and try to calculate the estimated profits after EIP 1559 right after we calculate the regular profits. So we can see here this mining rig will be making a day $44.83 without electricity cost, and then after electricity cost it will make around $41.23. So a month we're making around $1,236 pure profits, which is really good for this mining rig. Now if we go back to this sheet where I have all the information here, you guys can see here that the rig cost is $8,856. So that means with the electricity cost at 10 cents per kilowatt hour, this rig will pay itself off in around 7 months. Now it can be a lot quicker, like we've seen earlier in the beginning of this year how Ethereum skyrocketed. So if you do mine and save your coins in Ethereum or whatever coin you're mining and the price goes up, you can potentially pay this rig off a lot quicker. There have been some crazy profitability that happened not so long ago. Now if you do buy this rig at MSRP, which is impossible, you'll be paying it off in 4 months with electricity cost, and without electricity cost you'll pay it off in 3.8 months. So here you guys can also see the revenue monthly and the profits monthly that is based on March 6th, 2021. So please make sure that these numbers do change, and if you're watching this video one day after March 6th, the profits can potentially be a lot different. So to check the updated profits, there's a button here that you can click on, and that will take you to the calculator that I had open with the updated profits. So those are the profits without EIP implementation that's coming out in July. Now I will be making a video covering that topic in details, but until then, let me show you guys an example of what it will look like. So here you guys can click on enable block reward so you can change the number, and then after EIP 1559 will be implemented, the block reward will be a flat 2, plus some revenue that will come from MEV, and that's not going to be really that crucial at all. So now if I go ahead and hit calculate, you guys will be able to see here the profits did drop. So instead of getting around 1,000 and above a month, I will be getting around $800 a month pure profits, which is still not bad even with the 2 block reward, but it's a big drop. It's around 30% drop in your profitability. So we went from 1,236 a month to only $800 a month. Now that will be the effect of EIP 1559 for mining Ethereum. Now you can mine different coins such as Ravencoin or Conflux, and those are very good options as well. So that wraps up the profitability, guys. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. You can also check out the GPU overview video right here for the RTX 3080. You will find this Google Sheet in the descriptions below, and you will also find different mining rigs here. So the Gigabyte RX 5700 XT and all the other rigs that I've built on this channel. So feel free to browse through them and check the updated profitabilities, and you'll notice also the funny trend about the different dates and their profitability, so it can give you an idea of how GPU mining profitability can change. So now that wraps up the video. If you guys have any questions like I mentioned, please let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that thumbs up, and if you're new here, make sure you subscribe. Now I'm going to go ahead and leave this RTX 3080 mining rig build in my mining rig room, where it's going to be peacefully staying on the shelf, and it's going to mine in a cool environment until I eventually change out the thermal pads. So thank you guys again, and I hope you have a wonderful day.